It is increasingly accepted that trauma will produce lasting effects in the lives of those who've experienced things beyond the mind's ability to process in the moment and well into the future, the impact of which can be profound and often gets pushed down out of the survivor's conscious awareness. However, there is still some skepticism regarding traumatic memories being repressed, being unconsciously pushed out of sight, out of mind, later returning to the surface with the visual recollection, accompanied by the same sensations originally experienced and experiencing the associated emotions, as if for the first time. So, what's the truth? Is it possible for trauma survivors to repress memories for years, even decades, only to have them surface seemingly out of the blue, either in the form of flashbacks in the mind, or even while asleep, returning in what would otherwise be described as a nightmare? Can repressed memories happen at different ages and stages of a survivor's life? What is the difference between a dream and a repressed memory? And is there a way to distinguish one from the other? The answer is yes. And we will hear from a military combat veteran who experienced the surfacing of previously repressed memories. Memories of intense combat, of witnessing an extremely traumatic murder-suicide when he was in elementary school, and memories of a near-fatal head-on collision which left him with serious gaps in his memory of both the accident itself and a loss of time well after the accident. This trauma survivor will describe what it has been like to experience the resurfacing of his verifiable repressed memories, next on part 2 of this special edition of Journey to Healing. Welcome to Journey to Healing. Do you find yourself discouraged, troubled, in need of healing, but not sure where to turn? John Euler, a licensed professional counselor, is here to help. John has more than 30 years of professional experience, helping people deal with the issues that keep them emotionally and spiritually stuck. There is help. There really is hope. But there is a God who loves you, who wants to help you find peace and strength. And John Euler is here to help you find that on this edition of Journey to Healing.
Bert, welcome back. Thank you so much for your willingness to be with us and to discuss some very difficult things that you experienced in the past as an adult. And then we're also now going to be looking at something that happened when you were younger. But before we started taping this second half, you had referenced that in reviewing in your mind what we discussed just in part 1 about your experience on the ship, fighting a ship fire, and then when you went into Panama, that you recalled, and it was new news to me, so it'll be worth us noting, because really the focus is of our interview, the subject of what happens in trauma to memory, and whether or not, and there's a lot of science a lot of time has been devoted in the field of science, especially neuroscience. Bessel van der Kolk, in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, has referenced what happens within the brain when it comes to trauma. The hippocampus is responsible for processing memory, and depending upon what happens, we can have the rewiring of different pathways.
I got interested in trauma on my first day working at the Veterans Administration. 1978 was the year, and the Vietnam War was over by about 6 or 7 years. The very first day that I met Vietnam veterans, I was just blown away. These were guys who were my age, who were clearly smart and competent and athletic, and they clearly were just a shadow of their former self. Their bodies were clearly affected by trauma, and they had a very hard time connecting with new people after the war. Around that time, a group of us started to define what trauma is. And in the definition of PTSD, we write, these people have been exposed to an extraordinary event that is outside of normal human experience. In retrospect, that shows us how ignorant and narrow-minded we were, because it turned out that this is not an unusual experience at all. People usually think about the military when they talk about trauma, but at least 1 out of 8 kids in America witness physical violence between their parents. A very large number of people in general, but women in particular, have sexual experiences that were clearly unwanted and that left them confused and enraged. So, unlike what we first thought, trauma is actually extremely common. The problem with trauma is that it starts off with something that happens to us, but that's not where it stops, because it changes your brain. Much of the imprint of trauma is in that very primitive survival part of your brain that I like to call the cockroach brain. There's a part of you that just picks up what's dangerous and what's safe. And when you're traumatized, that little part of your brain, which is usually very quiet, continues to just send messages. I'm in danger. I'm not safe. That event itself is over, but you continue to react to things as if you're in danger. We're talking about survival. We're talking about staying alive. And so some people go into fight-flight, or on a more primitive level, people's brain shuts down and they collapse. You have these automatic responses that are not a product of your cognitive assessment, they're a product of your animal brain trying to stay alive in the face of something that part of your brain interprets as a life threat. And the problem then becomes that you are not able to engage or to coordinate your feelings with your thinking. Traumatized people have a tremendous problem experiencing pleasure and joy. But the core issue is our hormones and our physiological impulses that have to do with survival. Your body keeps mobilizing itself to fight. You have all kinds of immunological abnormalities, endocrine abnormalities, and that really devastates your physical health also. Oftentimes the physical problems are longer lasting than the mental problems.
And if someone is having to work through trauma, the goal is ultimately to kind of rewire those pathways so it doesn't seem like the war, whether a literal war or let's say childhood trauma, whether ideally so that the person doesn't feel like it's still happening, so that they're not always on point, they're not hypervigilant.
Neuroplasticity is a huge deal, in particular for human beings, because neuroplasticity is the way that we continue to shape our understanding of the outside world. Your nervous system's main job is to make predictions about what's going to happen in the outside world and to be able to respond in an adaptive way. It's really a prediction machine. So neuroplasticity, this change of the nervous system in response to experience, is the way that your nervous system updates its maps of prediction. If we were to play a sport or a game, or maybe even you would subject me to an experiment, or I would subject you to an experiment, where you would be rewarded for intentionally looking in the opposite direction of a sound, for instance, like that. If you did that enough times and with enough focus and attention, you would get so-called neuroplasticity. Those maps would shift and change such that a week later, a month later, maybe even 10 years later, if you heard a click over there, there's a higher probability that you would look in the opposite direction. We also have maps of prediction for things like emotional responses, how we think people will respond if we do A or B, how we think a person will respond or act if their face happens to be in a particular way or their skin tone. So we're constantly updating these maps. Neuroplasticity is the way we update those maps. And just to put a little bit of meat and detail on what neuroplasticity is, we have neurons, which are nerve cells. We have other cell types in our nervous system, but those nerve cells have an incredible capacity to change their patterns of connections. Their points of connection are actually little spaces called synapses. And synapses are where these different neurons transfer electrical and chemical information between each other. And basically your entire experience, what you sense, what you perceive, what you think, what you feel, And what you're able to do or not do is dictated by those patterns of electrical activity and chemicals. Neuroplasticity is literally changes in the patterns of connections between those neurons. So if you think about something like Google Maps, it's one way, but if you build a new road, there's a new road there. Neuroplasticity is essentially like building new roads. The mechanisms of neuroplasticity are quite different early in life. You can learn passively just by experience. Kids could learn several languages even without an accent up until about age 12, and then it gets much more difficult to learn languages without an accent. Then at some point, right about the age of 25, the whole process shifts. Neuroplasticity still can occur, but the whole mechanism for how it occurs changes. It takes more deliberate focus. There's one exception to that, which is the bad stuff. Typically, a traumatic or fearful event only takes once to reshape your nervous system. The good news is there are things that you can do to reshape your nervous system, additional plasticity to change those connections so that the traumatic or fearful event is no longer traumatic or fearful.
That's part of the process of working through trauma. You went through a number of traumatic events, certainly as a young adult, right? Or 19, actually not so much young, but 19, 20, 21, you went into the service, as we talked about in part one. You were aboard, is it the Constellation? Am I remembering?
Yes, sir.
The USS Constellation, the aircraft carrier. There was a jet fuel fire. Aircraft carriers, of course.
For some reason, I remember the date, August 2nd and 3rd of 88, I believe it was.
Okay. The ship was in San Diego on the West Coast in California, had just gotten offshore. And then, as you had indicated, a valve that was not supposed to be open or was shut. And you had jet fuel that went down into the boilers, and suddenly there was a major fire. You were, as part of your onboard job, you were involved in firefighting, not just trained in general, but you were going to be on the front lines, and you were as a 20.
I was a damage controlman, firefighter. Damage control handles all fires and floods, just to clarify that. For those in the Navy, they know who the flying squad is. Every ship has a flying squad. We were the first responders.
So you saw and you experienced a traumatic event. You indicated that then the ship was, so we're going to revisit that for just a moment so that people again can appreciate the impact of trauma, especially also what veterans go through. So part of this, this two-part series is dedicated to veterans, what they go through and what they have to adjust to and come to terms with. But then we're also discussing something that will directly have impact or have direct impact or direct implications on, quite frankly, abuse that somebody experienced as a child. Because we're looking at how an adult, so let alone a young person whose brain is still forming, what happens within the mind, what happens within the memory if something becomes overwhelming. So it's all the more ironic then here in part one, you were describing what happened on the ship. Then later on, just a couple of months later, as you thought you were going to evasion school, or a school that would help you deal with combat and in case you were captured, but you were then thrown into a live situation that unfolded in front of you.
I took on the school mainly just to pad my record, to be honest with you. I was looking for it for promotional sake. It looks good in the record. Okay. And I knew I've been through 2 boot camps, so I went through Army boot camp and Navy boot camp. I knew I could pass the school physically. So that was my motivation for that. I had a moment of insanity and thought I would make it a career. But anyway.
So if you would pick up then, so you left us with really 2 scenarios, one being on board the aircraft carrier. Mm-hmm. It catches fire as far as jet fuel going down into the boilers. That was a horrific situation. And then you were sent into the Panama conflict. As a matter of fact, prior to us taping, you informed me that if anybody should have received a Purple Heart, this is my estimation and it's fact, by the way, if you're wounded in battle, then you get a Purple Heart. You were bayoneted through the leg, so much so that you wanted to remove the gun.
The guys. Well, let me just tell you the quick story. Out of sheer exhaustion, I could hardly hold my gun up to the ready. That means up here ready to fire. And whenever we go in to sweep a room, we sweep from either left to right or right to left, depending on how we're stacked up at the door. When I came in to sweep my area, I was tired and I kind of had my gun down. It was more down across my body this way. And I had it up on my shoulder, but it was more pointed down. It wasn't up to the full ready. And that's called being lackadaisical. Okay. Exhaustion does that. It wears you out. As I stepped around the corner of the door, I was bringing it up. And as I stepped around, there was a guy right around the corner door. I didn't even know was there. And he had his gun down. He just happened to lift his gun up as I stepped literally right into his bayonet. And so he was bringing his bayonet up like this as I stepped forward, as I rounded the corner, and I stuck myself on his bayonet.
So
it wasn't an attack. It was more of a surprise to both of us. I could see it in his eyes. The minute I got stuck, I felt a sharp pain and I froze. And the guy behind me, all I saw was a pistol go past my head. I had shot him.
So Panamanian, and you ran into the gun and bayonet of a Panamanian.
Yeah, it was a Panamanian. I don't know if he was regular police or federale. I don't know how they rank themselves there, but he was a guy with a gun. So, and our job was to go through these buildings and sweep one area out because we knew we were catching fire from these buildings, and we had to go in and sweep each building floor by floor, room by room. And by the time you get to the 7th, 8th, 10th, 12th one, you're so tired from going up and down stairs, and you're scared. You don't know where the bullet's going to come from. I mean, at one point, it could be a grenade come flying down the stairs at you. You never know. And we're scared, got your hairs up a little bit. And by the time I got to that last one, I just didn't care anymore. I was like, if I step in and I die, but I'm going to shoot him first if I get a chance. And for some reason, my adrenaline level started dropping, and it was turning into exhaustion because you can only maintain so much adrenaline for so long. And I think that's what happened. As I stepped around the corner, the guy behind me. He comes in, he's a Marine, and he comes in and he's got his hand touching my back. And his job is to sweep. I was to come in and go center to the right. He was to go left, center, or something like that. I don't even remember now the exact details. But as I came in and stepped around the corner, I just walked right into it. And it stuck me right above the knee, caught me in the fleshy part, went right to the bone. The tip of the blade actually stuck my bone. It didn't go deep in my bone, but it stuck to the bone. And I found out that the femoral artery runs just less than 2 inches from right where he stuck me. That's why they didn't want me moving. I get it now why, but at the time I was like, pull the damn thing out, it hurts, pull it out. And it was him or whoever behind me. I think it was him. He definitely somebody behind me shot the guy. The next thing I know, I got guys grabbing me and grabbing the rifle out of the guy's hand and holding it still. And they unhooked the bayonet from the rifle and took the rifle away. And they sat me down with this bayonet stuck in my leg. And that's really all I remember. Next thing I know, man, they're hitting me with morphine and all this other stuff. And I started going, whoa, I feel sick, morphine overload, And they drug me backwards out of there. Next thing I know, I'm getting strapped to a gurney and I'm getting flown out to they had like a ambulance thing waiting. And then I don't know, I kind of went out after that. I have a vague memory of being in a helicopter, and I was struggling in the helicopter to pay it. All I kept thinking was pull the stupid thing out of my leg. I was still in fight mode, pull it out. I got to go back, wrap me up, and I'm going to go back and fight. That was what was going on in my head, but I was so unaware of the reality of what was going on. It just seems like a lot of events happening all at once. So it was really confusing to my head. And suddenly the guy on board, his name's Rob Therian. He was the flight nurse, if you want to call him that. I guess I struggled one too many times, and he literally took his elbow, and they wear elbow pads, and he caught me right between the eyes, just pop like that, hit me right here between the eyes with his elbow pad, knocked me back, knocked me out. He couldn't have me fighting around in the helicopter like that, and he strapped me back down tight, and I was out. And next thing I know, I wake up in a hospital bed with my leg all bandaged up, and the bayonet's gone, and I'm like, well, when you send me back in, he says, no, you're going back to you're back to your home unit. Oh, thanks. I got nothing more said than that. They didn't give me there was no reward. I didn't hear of anybody getting medals out of that.
And that's what
I don't know. Mentioned. They may have, but I wasn't there long enough to know. I know I didn't get a Purple Heart. One guy asked me, do you deserve a Purple Heart for that? I said, I think so. I went and talked to the VA. They said, no, it was a police action. Has to be a declared war. That's what I was told. Now, how true all that is, I don't know. I don't really care. I don't care about the medal. What I care about is, why did that whole thing even happen? I'm looking at it more from a political mind. Why did that have to happen? I get Noriega was a bad guy. Come on. So what? You're sending our troops in for your own, whoever is in the powers to be. It's more politically in my brain.
Yeah, well, I want to, so again, just so our viewers, so the listeners understand what you just said is, it was listed or labeled after the fact as a police action. So those soldiers and sailors that lost their lives. You mentioned there was a SEAL team that went in.
Yeah. There was a couple guys that I witnessed visually with my own eyes. There was a couple Marines I saw go down. One was right next to me. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. One next to me dropped, and I saw another one that dropped at another time, moving. And I'm sure there were more. But those are the two I definitely remember watching drop, getting hit. And I mean, dead drop. They didn't were just wounded. They were dead.
So
okay.
I want to challenge any lawmaker then who's in Congress or in the Senate to go back and revisit this issue, that those that served in Panama need to have that reframed. So that was combat. That was not a police action. So
no,
those of you that were,
war is war. I don't care what label you put on.
That's right. So
bullets
that's
fly, people die. That's war. Sorry.
That's an important piece right there. I mean, you having a bayonet run through your leg, yeah, that constitutes a Purple Heart. So that's egregious, and that hopefully is something positive then, even as you're describing. Once again, you're painting the picture, giving context for what we're also going to talk about. But that's an injustice that needs to be righted, that needs to be corrected.
And from a veteran's point of view, the veteran's the one who always gets the shit. Now, excuse my French. We always get shit on. I'm sorry. Look how many homeless we got on the streets. I chalk it up to that's our government being our government. They speak a lot of good words, but when rubber meets the road, they don't follow through.
Right.
And it is the veteran who ends up getting the stick. I'm trying to be nice here. I'm trying to keep it clean, but it's us who pay the price. The people who volunteered, just because we're not from privileged families, I'll say it that way. I'm just a common person. My dad was never rich. He's a blue collar working class, and a lot of them were 99% of the people serving are from those environments. And we just have a love for our country. We have a love for our family and our people. And, after 9/11, I saw a lot of people signing up and jumping in, and I almost jumped back in. I had just gotten out literally the month before 9/11 happened. I got out of active service. I could have gone back. But I had a young daughter at the time, and I said, you know what? It's time for me to be a father. And that's what kept me out. So in a way, she might have saved my life. I don't know. So, yeah, you're right. It is an injustice. And I have tried to say something about it, but every time I do, it just kind of gets swept under the rug. It's like, here comes that crazy guy at the VA talking to us again. Just get him out of here. That's the attitude they threw at me. And I'm just like, you know what? It ain't worth pursuing. It's just, and it ain't for me. I don't care about the medal.
Right.
I don't care about ribbons. I don't care about medals. I care about being what's fair is fair, what's right is right. I don't like bullies. I grew up my whole life not liking bullies. And in my mind, there's times where on my own leadership appeared to be the bully sometimes, all the way up to the top of the command. Some of them, they're very bullyish, and I don't like bullies. It's not fair. It's not right. So,
you had mentioned, and it's worth us just briefly mentioning, and then we're going to transition into what happened or what you experienced when you were in your early teens, I believe. But as you had described on part one, you described a ship fire on your aircraft carrier, and then you going into Panama into war. Okay, we're not called a police action, but there was another fire that you had sort of not remembered or had passed.
I knew about it. I remembered it, and I brought it up, but it's hard to keep it chronological.
That's right. That speaks to memory and trauma.
Yeah, after the fire on my ship, we rebuilt the ship and had it going underway testing within the following month and a half. Sometime after that, I don't remember. I think it was the next cruise we went on after we did our sea trials. We did sea trials, came back for a little while, and then we went out again. Anyway, our supply ship, the USS White Plains, caught fire. What we didn't know is that their whole fire party was much smaller than ours. Our department was pretty big. We're talking a couple hundred guys. Their department's all of maybe 10. That's the difference, 10 to 20 guys. And we were sending supplies over to them, OBAs, AFFF, all the stuff that they need to fight the fire. And we got a signal that they need guys. We didn't know that the first explosion on their ship took out their initial fire party. They were at general quarters with all the general people fighting the fire. They're trained, but they're not as trained as we are. How to isolate fuel storage areas, any weapons, that sort of stuff. And this is a ship we didn't serve on. So it's like sending a bunch of cave divers into a cave they've never been in to fight a cave fire. That's what it's like. So we also have a big disadvantage as firefighters to do that. But we know tactics and techniques to learn it quickly and get in there and start figuring it out real fast. So they flew us over. They did a helo rep over, and they were bringing us over in sets of 5 and 10 guys at a time. And I think 5 was the limit we could get on board the helo. And they were flying us over in sets of 5 with supplies, OBA canisters and all the other equipment, things we need. And we were literally our ships were literally side by side. We were just, 1,000 yards apart in the ocean. And so they were just picking us up off our deck, flying us over, setting down, letting us get out and go in and start firefighting. That lasted, for time frame wise, I think we were on their ship maybe 8 hours, 6 or 8 hours. And then they flew us back over to our ship. Okay. We got in, we knocked down the fire, got into there, and they only had 2 machinery rooms, whereas we have 4. We're a much bigger ship. We got in, kept the other machinery room from catching fire. We shut down and locked down and put out the fire in the first machinery room. And on doing so, when I went in, I was on a nozzle actually throwing water at a fire. And guys behind me, there were 3 guys behind me, were pushing the hose in. And I stepping on something. It felt like machinery, debris, trash. I didn't know what it was. You couldn't see. You can't see more than maybe 2 feet from your eyes. And it's full of smoke. We're trying to kind of move along, stay low, and we're focused on the glow of the fire to get it knocked down. We're throwing foam on it, AFFF foam. We knock it down, and then they bring in a hose. They have trunk hoses that they bring in with machinery up on top, and they suck the smoke out. And we have to stand there and do what we call reflash watch, because as you're sucking that out, you're drawing oxygen back into that space. You got to make sure no fires reflash anywhere. And so I was on reflash watch. I'm standing there. I still got plenty of time on my timer. And I started looking kind of behind me like this and looking around. And I glanced over my back, one of my shoulders, and I realized what I stepped on right behind me, within feet of me, was a body. And it was a body laying halfway, arm and a leg hanging off the deck plate. And the rest of his body was up on the deck plate. And his head was kind of hung off the side. And he was fried. He was black, crisp. I realized what I stepped on was his arm, or something that was sticking out. I stepped on some part of his arm or leg maybe, but I stepped on him. I didn't even know it. That kind of hit my head funny, And I thought, okay, I can deal with this. Just watch for reflash, and I just went right back to my training. I said, just do my job. That doesn't exist behind me. Just pay attention to what's in front of you. And even the guys behind me were kind of shocked when they saw it. They were kind of moving around going, oh, crap. And one of the guys ran out to get word up top to whoever's in charge, what we found. Well, it turns out within that whole big space, we were only on one side of the space. On the other side, they found, I think, 3 or 4 more guys that didn't get out. So altogether, I think there were 6 or 7, 9 maybe. I don't know. I don't know the exact number, but I know there was more than 5. Because there was at least 3 on the other side, 2 on my side. And I think they found 1 or 2 more down below on the next level down. They just didn't make it out.
At approximately 2 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time today, the Navy combat storage ship USS White Plains suffered a fire in the main engine spaces while conducting operations in the South China Sea. 6 crewmen are confirmed dead and 5 injured. The injured have been medevaced to the USS Sacramento. Of those 5, 4 will be further transferred to facilities at Clark Air Base in the Republic of the Philippines. The USS Constellation and the USS Fox assisted in the firefighting effort. The fire is out and the ship is currently under tow by the USNS Sioux. The USS White Plains is home ported in Guam and has a complement of 403 enlisted personnel and 25 officers. Identification of those killed is being withheld pending notification of next of kin. An investigation will be conducted to determine the cause of the fire. That is absolutely all the information that I have on White Plains at this point.
So the long and short of the story was, because there is only like 2 or 3 medics on board their ship, they're handing us the body bags and telling us to peel them off the deck and slide them into body bags. Now, I've never done that kind of work before in my life, and I never want to again. That was nasty, and I'm not going to get into the gory details of it. It's horrible. But we managed to stick these people in these bags and then help push them up through the trunks to get them up above so they could be put over into wherever they do with them. I don't even know. Get them up on deck where they can be worked on or whatever they do to them. We wrapped up our hoses and we backed out of the space. We made sure that things had cooled down. There was no chance of reflash. Did our job. And that's when and this all happened within about an 8-hour period, 9-hour period. It was just during the day. They flew us back over to our ship and all of us, none of us said a word about it. We didn't talk to each other about it. It was just like, we don't want to talk about it, And so that incident happened. I don't want to give exact dates because I can't tell you. All I know is it was after August. So August, maybe September, middle of September, October, somewhere right in there is when that happened. Then we went out on just a couple more run-ups, and I was getting ready to go to Panama. Now, see, what I'm remembering is Panama was actually in 89 at the end of that year. During the time between the White Plains incident and I believe it was 89, the more I think about it, there's a time period there I poured myself into a bottle. So it was longer than I thought, the more I think about it now. Those months after that, the next year is when Panama kicked off, because that would have been correct, because from 88 to 89, if you put that all together in a 12-month span, within a year, within 12 months, I had all this happen, though. And I poured myself into a bottle in between to numb it, to deaden it. And I had gotten the okay to go to Panama, and then I went to Panama, and that's when all this other stuff kicked off.
Really
had I known, I would have said, cancel my orders. I'm not going. But
well, Bert, you're again helping us in a number of respects. One is specific to veterans. That certainly one of an important takeaway is that veterans need to consider getting into some sort of counseling or group counseling or in one way or another so they can decompress, debrief, and get the trauma out. Talk therapy is so important because you have to be able to, it feels like you're reliving it at first. Eventually it will die down a little bit, the intensity as you begin to. That's how it ends up finally being able to go back into, be placed where it belongs, which is in the past.
Yeah, instead of living it every day,
That's right.
In the beginning, I was never out of it. It never stopped. But as time went on, whether through self-medication or through time, it became more of a back here nightmare. And it's still back there. It's still a nightmare. But it seems like it's dimmed. It's not as in my face. It's not as prevalent. But I still wake up nights with the cold sweats. I still have moments of jump, whenever I hear a bang or a whatever, something that resembles something similar. I still flinch at 4th of July, the sound of the booms. And it's not the smaller cracks that scare me. Bullets don't scare me as much as I thought they might. It's actually the mortar rounds. If you hear mortar rounds go boom, you ever hear the loudest boom on a 4th of July firework? There you go. That's what it sounds like. And you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know when it's going to go boom or where. You know, it's not like the movies where it's like, oh, run over here, it's going to hit here. No, it ain't nothing like that. You know, so, but yeah, that incident, like I said, there again, this almost proves your point. I could not remember chronologically. I know these events happened. And I think before in our last segment, I remember I mentioned I thought the White Plains happened first, but no, now that I remember, we were down getting repaired. And it was after that that the White Plains happened. And that White Plains has happened between our repairs and me going to Panama. So.
And here you as...
And I don't have a newspaper in front of me showing headlines
right?
of what happened when.
But again, as you just said, it speaks to and kind of the focus of or the purpose of us getting together for this interview is twofold. One, to help honor veterans and help them really maybe facilitate them getting additional healing, but then also addressing what really I consider to be the misnomer, and it's a tremendous misnomer, that if anything significant happens in one's past, especially in childhood, it will be remembered. And so therefore there can't be the idea of repressed memories. And therefore, if somebody suddenly remembers something years later, so as an adult, suddenly they get a memory, and therefore we would call it a suppressed or repressed memory. So that if a repressed memory comes to the surface, those that the naysayers, and when I say naysayers, I really mean this, those that are perpetrators or perpetrator apologists, or those that are inclined to say that if a child goes through something traumatic, a child will remember it, especially sexual abuse.
I don't buy that. But
right. And so in the 80s came about what's called false memory syndrome, satanic panic, a lot of that kind of stuff. And
right.
I have worked with people that were on the receiving end of ritualistic abuse. That means systematic and regular and consistent abuse. The more the male mind gets into deviance, the worse it will get. And therefore they will enact upon kids and do things to kids. But you had an experience, so didn't have to do with childhood sexual abuse, but it's going to speak to the power of the adult brain still keeping at bay very powerful stuff that may have happened when a young person was younger. That's redundant. When somebody was younger, you had an experience that you had forgotten something, a situation that was very traumatic when you were a teen. And so here we're talking to you, Bert, an adult reflecting upon very traumatic situations, meaning way outside the norm, in combat or in the military. So you're you're fighting fires in the military, ship fires, and then you go into combat. And so we talked about how even of the 3 days or so that you were there, you only remember a part of that experience. So we certainly have set the stage for, and most people understand amnesia. And so as an adult with an adult-sized brain, or as a 21-year-old, the 21-year-old brain has had a tendency to repress those memories. So that's pretty much as a young adult with a fully sized brain, we have then what amounts to repressed memories that still have been coming up, and you've been working through those for 40 years. What was very compelling to me is a while ago, a number of months ago now, you awakened out of what somebody might think is a dream. So you are sleeping and something comes back to you.
It's like a vivid memory. Yeah.
There we go.
Memory. I woke
while
up
you're dreaming, that's what's so compelling. So we think if you're dreaming, then what goes on in the mind is a dream. But you came to discover very quickly that what somebody might label as a dream, because you're sleeping, as you awaken, right? As you awaken, you realize what was going on within you was you awakened out of a memory, though, while you were asleep. So it's not that dreams can't contain actual facts and details.
Oh, I know they do. Because I can tell when I have a flashback, when I'm dead asleep and I wake up in a panic, I'm reliving details that repeat. I can have the same dream, nothing changes, over and over, and it's not a dream, it's a memory. And I do remember it. That's what tells me it's real. That did happen for whatever reason, why my brain will not let it go, why it keeps looping. It's like it could be something as small as someone looking at me a certain way in my memory. It could be something as a sound. It could be a smell. Something can trigger it. Okay, now those are all triggering points. But a dream, even if you have the similar dream that repeats, there's always something different that changes within the dream. That's your brain processing and filing and memories and whatever it does. That's how I calculate it. And I know whenever I woke up this particular night, early morning, I just all of a sudden, and it wasn't even scary. It wasn't a nightmare or anything. It was more of a wow, aha. I relived something I saw that was horrific, but it was just the aha moment of a little heart pump, for a minute. And I'm like, I forgot all about that.
Okay, and there's the key
Why
right
it
there.
came up, I don't know. I don't know.
Bert, we're gonna have you go into as much detail as you want.
Okay.
But what
I don't remember what year that. I don't remember what year we're talking.
That's okay. I've got the year, and we'll describe it. And
I was young.
I'm going to show a newspaper clipping, but what I want the viewer to really let sink in is the power of the mind to push away those things that are overwhelming. So we've talked about your experience in the military. So with an adult brain, you still have lost parts of your time during those 3 days of combat. So as powerful as it,
yeah, right? I still haven't gotten all of it back. Between the time of me firing the rocket I mentioned in the first segment to the time of me being bayoneted, I don't remember anything. Okay. I've not been able to put anything together after that rocket fired. And I know that was a day before I got bayoneted. So somewhere in there, I was not me. I was totally bye-bye. I couldn't tell you what happened.
There you go.
I don't know what happened.
So as an adult with an adult brain, okay, compartmentalization happens, the memory goes somewhere. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to, so that's fact. Nobody can debate the fact that an adult can compartmentalize and push memories down. There's a form of amnesia. So if that's true with an adult, then all the more that same phenomenon can be in play when someone is younger. Mm-hmm. You experience something that by the time, and you'll have to remind us of the age, my guess is about 15, I think what you said, but
what year did this happen?
So what age did you remember?
Because I graduated in 84. Okay, so 3 years of high school, 84, 83, 82. Junior high was 3 years before that, so 81, 80, 79. So if it was 79 through 80, I was in junior high. It might have been my first year of high school. I don't remember.
It's actually 78. It's actually 78.
So it was before I started junior high even.
Yeah, there we go. So
18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, what, I was 11?
Okay. So at age 11, you experienced something that you didn't recall, so your mind didn't release it back to you.
I was young, and my mind, I had nightmares maybe the first couple nights afterwards. And then my brain kind of just blocked it. I kept myself so busy that I didn't want to think of it. I didn't want to, I didn't want to see it on the news. And it was in the news for a few days.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to look at it. I was like, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. I was in denial.
There you go. And it got compartmentalized. So what age were you when you recollected it? It came up in a dream.
This was just within the last year. Maybe, when I was talking to you last, or was that a year ago?
So approximately, you don't have to give your age away, but approximately give or take.
I'm 58 now.
There we go.
I was probably last year I was 57. So it was not that long ago.
At least 45 years, this memory was tucked away.
Yeah. And I didn't think anything of it until then. And I told you about it when I was talking with you. And that's why I said this shocked me. Why did this come up all of a sudden? So I had totally forgotten about
memory. So you had a memory that was repressed for 45 years, and up it comes with quite the detail. So I've set the
I
stage.
remember it all. It's not like,
Okay, so let's talk about it. And then I'm going to show, as we're talking, Bert, I will bring up to help people see how, yeah, it's possible to start to remember details even 45 years later that had previously been forgotten and pushed down, separated from conscious awareness. So tell us what you remembered as
I'm not going to go into everything I did that day. I'm just going to go right to the point of what led me to that point where I witnessed this. I went into Salt Lake City with a friend of mine. We were going to go watch a movie downtown. So, and back then in those days, I was even if I was 11 or 12, I rode the city buses. We got to go, it's a different world back then, not like today. So we were walking down, I believe it's West Temple is the street. It's in Salt Lake City, West Temple. And we're walking toward the skyrise buildings. And there's only a few of them back in these days. There was a few there. And one was, hotels and stuff. I didn't pay attention to which was which. I'm just walking to know where to turn to go up the street, up to the theater. We're heading up to the State Street Theater. And that's on around 4th or 5th South, maybe. It's not there anymore. It used to be. I don't remember the name of the theater these days. I also saw Star Wars there. That's how I know the theater was there. It's now a parking lot today. But we were walking up to turn the corner, and we were going to go up to the theater, maybe 7, 8, 10 blocks away. And as we're walking up the street, what I witnessed was my friend ran. This is how bad this was. All I saw was something fall and hit and bounce on the ground. And it took a minute. I'm going, is someone throwing trash out there at the balcony? What's going on?
So you're walking on the sidewalk?
I'm walking on the sidewalk. Yeah, and it happened right in front of us, maybe less than 100 feet away.
What city?
It's Salt Lake City, Utah. And then all of a sudden another one bounced just nearby. And I realized that's not trash. That's blood. Those are bodies. And they're not big bodies. They're my size or smaller. And then I realized the first one that fell is wearing a dress kind of outfit. It's a girl. And my brain just kind of went into this slow motion lockup. I couldn't believe it's like, this is surreal. This ain't real, And I heard screaming coming from wherever, somewhere around me. I could hear someone screaming, on the street. Oh my God, and whatever. I couldn't tell you what they were saying. And all of a sudden, another person fell. And I must have seen, I think 3 of them I can guarantee I saw fall. It's kind of fuzzy because my brain was kind of doing loopy things in my head at that point because I couldn't believe what was going on. And I'm starting to back up. My friend ran. I guess he clicked quickly what was going on. He ran. And I'm kind of looking around. I couldn't see where they were coming from because I'm down underneath looking up this way at the building and these awnings stick out. And one girl, I guess, one of them, I don't know which one, I saw a body flip and spin through the air and fall. And she landed somewhere up here above me. From what I understand after the fact, that girl actually lived. She was the oldest daughter. And there was a man throwing his family off a balcony, some lunatic. And the mother, I don't know if she went first, last. I couldn't tell you who went in what order because I didn't want to see the newsreels. But this is the kind of events that, as you see, it takes time for your brain to process what is going on, what's happening, And as a young kid, I'd never seen nothing like that, not like that, who's crazy enough to do that to, anybody. I backed up and all of a sudden people start coming around and screams. And pretty soon within, I don't know, could have been within 4 or 5 minutes, here comes a policeman, here comes and then it gets real crowded. And I'm just backing off in the crowd going, oh my God. And they're, did you say anything? Did you say anything? And I kept my mouth shut. I didn't say anything. I wasn't interviewed. I didn't tell the police. I just kind of backed off because it scared me. What could I tell them that these other people didn't see? And that was where I was at. I was a young kid. I was scared. So I turned and I quickly started walking down the street. I never did get to see my movie. My friend, I don't know where he went. He made it back on a bus home. I lived out about 35 minutes away in Kearns, Utah. That's on the west side of the valley. And so I had money. So I went ahead and I jumped on a bus. I knew which bus number 35. Why do I remember that today? Couldn't tell you. I jumped on bus 35 and it took me out to right near where I had to go. And I did a short, maybe half-mile walk to home. Those things I remember. The vision of it, though, the shock of the vision of what I witnessed, I pushed it back because it scared me. That to me, that was a monster I didn't want to see. So I pushed it back and in my head, and I said, no, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to hear about it. Everything's good. Everything's good. Life is good, And I did that for years, I guess. And I'm okay with it now because I kind of put it in adult perspective. But as a young kid, yeah, it traumatized me. It haunted me. And I just never wanted to accept the fact that what I saw. And I remember there were a couple times my dad would be watching the news, especially the night or two after this event. I did tell my mom and dad what I saw, but that I was there, and they didn't have any real answers. They gave me a hug, told me, I'm sorry you saw that. I'm sorry people are mean and evil and bad things happen sometimes. So, like I said, I just pushed it back in my mind, and I just focused on my little life of going to school with my friends and this and that, but somewhere up here, yeah, I had to block it. It's a protection thing to protect me emotionally and spiritually from it, and, it's kind of the same thing, even into my adulthood. My brain still does that. That's how I've made it this far. There's evil things I've seen, and, in that book, the mind, whatever it is, keeps a score and all that. Yeah, it does, because it won't let you forget. It's still there. And if you don't come to some kind of terms with it, somehow it could bury you, or you can overcome it and move forward. And like I mentioned in the last segment, I've had to learn to fall back on my religion, on my faith in God and all this. I've had to fall back on, look what I have good here now, focus on it. I'm not in a bottle anymore. I got out of that, thank God. And I'm telling anybody out there, you want to pick up a bottle to bury your woes, you're not burying nothing. You're just putting fuel to come out in a bigger fire later. I'm telling you. And that's the truth. Now, I don't mean to, I know where you're coming from with the sexual abuse angle. And I am very much against it, by the way. I'm with you on this. I am going to tell a short thing that I wasn't planning on saying at first, and that is that my son, within the last 2 years, divulged to me that he had been molested. Now, this son is now 17. He's a young man. The troubles he's facing that he hid and buried. This happened when he was only like 9 or 10. So for years, he kept it hidden and buried and trying to deal with it. I didn't know about it. And it is a local boy in the neighborhood. Okay. That was the perpetrator. It took every ounce of my strength not to go over there and shoot that kid right between the eyes. We reported it to the police. We did our due diligence. SLED was involved because this kid's father happens to be on our city council. Little sticky. It all got swept under the rug. And I told the father, I said, look, I don't wish any ill will on you or your family. I said, but he needs help. He needs mental help. And I said, because I care about you as people, I said, I would suggest you get him help, or he's going to end up behind bars as a hardened criminal. And I said, what he did or didn't do, I'm not here to fight you over that. What I'm here to tell you is my son is not going to say those things unless it really happened. I know that much about my son. The details he told me happened. When it happened, even when he divulged it to me, he wouldn't have known those things, because my family is not anywhere even close to those dark secret type stuff. The stuff that happened to my son happened, and I'm having a hard time sometimes dealing with that, and I can't allow myself to push that back here and pretend it didn't happen. And this is why I'm against child molestation, abuse, and such things. How am I as a father to protect my son? But it's not about me. It's about my son. How do I help him now? And honestly, I've had a lot of hard days with him. So these memories that he had to push back in his mind, I can relate to. It's the same thing. And even though I didn't experience it myself, in a way, I'm experiencing it through him. The hurt, the pain, the frustration, no one believing you, or you think you're crazy or whatever. It's the same thing, just on different circumstances. I just wanted to bring that up because I do relate. I do get it. Anybody out there who ever sees this doesn't think there aren't people out there who love and care and understand. Well, here's one. I do love and care and I do understand. And I really honestly pray that people will understand therapy, number one. Be willing to try to help yourself, because no one's going to just hand you it. It's not a basket. They're just going to hand you and say, here, you're fixed. Unless you believe in the almighty Jesus and he's coming to fix everything, which I happen to, but not everybody does. All that aside, we're people on this earth. And whenever we start thinking that we're strong enough to handle every given situation that comes along, you are for a very short period of time, but it's going to overrun you. It's going to overwhelm your brain. The human mind isn't meant to deal with some of these traumas. And it takes something stronger and bigger than ourselves with help of others. And this is why, John, I wanted to thank you personally in the air of everybody who's listening, that you've helped me in that process. And I thank you for that. You've been that extra tool in my toolbox. And I needed that. And I appreciate it. And you've been a great help. If there's any more questions.
Yeah, well, Bert, thank you. And again, as someone who has gone through a lot, and now, as you've just referenced about your son, it's a whole nother journey that you're having to walk through.
It's another chapter in my book.
Right.
That's what it is. And that's how I have to catalog it that way. This is just another chapter in my life, another chapter in my book. And I look back on how much I've been through. I can get through this too.
There you go.
But I'm trying to do what's right for my son now to help him.
Right. And you are being very helpful for those that have experienced things like your son, who early on, say much earlier, pushed those things down. As you say, your son pushed those things down. And
still to this day, he doesn't want to talk about it too much to this day. And I get it. I understand why.
And unfortunately, then adding insult to injury, you've had, meaning out in, that entered into the public domain, the idea of false memories. And let's see, hold on here, we'll bring Bert back. Hold on just a second here. Bert, you are helping us, as well as especially survivors who experienced abuse early on that ended up involuntarily suppressing the information. Now it comes out as adults, and unfortunately, into the public domain came in my estimation, a nefarious push with this misnomer of false memory foundation, false memory syndrome stems from the false memory foundation. In my estimation, those are perpetrators and perp apologists that want to silence survivors. So people found a very convenient way to do that by suggesting that if something traumatic happened, they would remember it. But if somebody supposedly suppressed something, then it's not real. And so you, as an adult, you've shared with us that as an adult, it shows in real time, as it were, that an adult can repress things. So how much more can a young person, and you've just shared then what happened when you were age 11, that it didn't resurface until 40 years later, 45 years later. So
the human mind's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's amazing how it can go through so much. Some people live their whole life and never experience any trauma at all like that. And others, it hits them left and right. I unfortunately drew a more hit card, I guess you want to call it that, but like I said, I just want those who are experiencing such things to understand there's always hope. There's always hope. Don't give up. Don't think of suicide. Don't think of, life's so horrible, I got to end it, that kind of thing. I've seen sailors, soldiers, Marines. I've seen people I talked a guy down one time in service from slitting his wrists. I mean, he slit one wrist. And we managed to stop it, the bleeding, and yeah, we got him help. But that's the thing. We can't give up. Like that old biblical saying, "Endure to the end," type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You got to remember, where there's bad, there's good coming. If you're at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. Always think of that. If you hit rock bottom, relax. There's nowhere to go but up. It's going to get better.
That's
right? So,
well, I'm going to now show for the viewers the reality in terms of the impact of what you described that you saw when you were in 5th grade or so. So I'm going to bring up
5th or 6th, 7th grade.
Right. So here's what you had pushed down. We had guy, I forget his first name. So here's the dad down here. And it turns out that he was a self-proclaimed Messiah.
Yeah, he was a nut job.
Right. So he became, in essence, his own little cult leader. And here's the family. Yeah. And the dad had committed suicide. It turns out they had been living in this hotel for 6 months or longer, accruing all sorts of debt. And these kids idolized their dad. And so it turns out a number of them, including the one that survived, actually, and she reports, a survivor reports that she jumped willingly. She felt that she was going to join her dad. So the mother, 2 days after the death, she takes all her kids up onto the 11th floor of what was then the Shiloh Hotel and begins to have them jump. And the younger ones didn't want to, and so she forced them.
She threw them off. Yeah,
right. So
I saw the younger ones, I think, because I mean the first couple that fell.
Well, that's Emmanuel David. He changed his name, first name Emmanuel.
Yeah, the David family. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the tombstone or the headstone. I'm going to get out of this, and then we're going to watch a video. I did a compilation, and I forget the person that put this together. The name will come up as far as attribution. But Bert will.
I almost wished I'd have been on one of these reports, so you could see me getting interviewed as a kid. Then maybe people would say, "Oh wow, you can have suppressed memory."
There you go.
But I totally forgot about it.
Bert, you had referenced, and it's actually referenced in there. You haven't seen what I'm going to show.
No, I haven't looked at any of the news. I saw some news feeds on TV back in the day, the reporters talking about it, and I'd turn and leave the room. So go ahead. I'm going to take a deep breath.
Okay, there we go. But before I do, you had when you relayed that when this memory while you were sleeping came back to you, so we could say in the form of a dream, but as you differentiated very well, difference between a memory and a dream. You said you recalled the onlookers starting to yell things up at the mother.
That's all I heard. Yeah, somebody out here around me was yelling something. You crazy? What are you doing? Something. I don't know what they were saying.
But there was something about they were telling her to jump.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you what they were saying.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what you told me. It was very interesting because we're going to hear it here. So it still shows how the mind then, right? You related to me. And then now we're talking about it a second time. And so it's not to question. It just shows you how the mind deals with trauma. You said, John, I remember they were saying, jump, bitch, jump. And so here, as I was looking
I think I do vaguely remember somebody saying that, but that didn't happen right up front. Up front, first, they were screaming at her.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Right.
Stop.
Because the kids are dropping
And then I
down.
do remember as they were falling later on, like within a minute later or 2 or 3, I couldn't tell you time. But then I do remember someone's telling her to jump. That's the best you can do is jump and they call her names and all that. So
yeah, but the reason it stuck out with me is they're going to interview people and guess what they quote. So I first heard
about
this
the same thing. Yeah.
So here we're going to watch. It's about a 5 minute and 35 second video, and then we'll have you kind of talk about what if anything else comes to mind.
We do know what happened at approximately 7:15 on August 7th, 1978. Jim Bradley, the hotel manager, who had just spoken with the new widow the previous evening, was standing at the front desk when his wife, who also helped manage the hotel, approached him and said, quote, "Jim, they're jumping from the balcony," unquote. Jim exited the hotel and went to the east side of the building, where a crowd of onlookers was gathering. Witnesses that saw the whole event state that who we now know as Rachel walked her kids to the railing of room 1105. There she pushed Joseph 8, David 7, and Rebecca 6 up and over the railing. At least 2 of these younger children clung to Rachel before going over. After that, the older children, Rachel 15, Elizabeth 14, Joshua 13, and Deborah 9, stood on folding chairs that were stacked next to the railing and jumped without provocation from their mother. All the while this was happening, the crowd was yelling at Rachel to stop, but it was to no avail. After the children had gone over, Rachel stepped up and sat on the railing for around 30 seconds. The crowd was angry at what they had just witnessed and began chanting, "Jump, bitch, jump." And that is exactly what she did.
Lifted them up and dropped them over. And the last person paused for a while and then just went over the edge.
I kept yelling, "Oh God, stop him, stop him!" But then we could see some observers up on the platform there.
All were members of the Emmanuel David family. The father, Emmanuel, committed suicide by asphyxiation Monday. His body was found yesterday in a pickup parked up a canyon. When deputies last night told his wife Rachel about the suicide, she said it didn't surprise her that her husband had said he was ready for the next world. Emmanuel considered himself the true prophet, the Messiah, God. His family and a few close friends believed him. This morning, the mother and the 3 children who voluntarily jumped apparently decided to join him in the next world.
6 of the David family members landed on a canopy roof of the hotel coffee shop, 9 stories down, then onto the sidewalk. 3 fell the entire 11 stories onto the sidewalk. One of the boys ended up in the gutter. Witnesses say that the youngest daughter, Rebecca, desperately grabbed onto the railing and Rachel pried her fingers loose. This was confirmed when an autopsy was performed on her by the bruising on the tips of her fingers and broken fingernails. They were all taken to area hospitals, where they were all pronounced dead upon arrival or shortly thereafter, except one, Rachel, the oldest child of Rachel and Emmanuel David.
She just literally mangled both of her legs. All the bones in both of the legs are broken. She fell astraddle of something and she split her pelvis and literally tore right up into the abdominal cavity. She sustained some abdominal injuries, including a ruptured spleen. She also has a slight bruise on the lung, and she also has a fractured shoulder that's an open fracture.
At first it was thought that it was Elizabeth that was still alive. It was later confirmed that it was Rachel. Rachel was admitted to the shock and trauma unit of the LDS hospital. She was in a coma, and doctors weren't sure if she was going to survive. She immediately went into surgery, where she was administered 21 units of blood. About a week into her hospital stay, she was listed in stable condition, although she was still unconscious. After 2 weeks, she was still in a coma. However, the doctors felt that she was gaining consciousness. After multiple surgeries to repair the damage from the fall to her broken body, she regained consciousness. Rachel was kept protected from the public, so little is known about what happened to her after being released from the hospital. It is known that she lived in a foster home for a time and has been in different care facilities in the Salt Lake Valley throughout the years. She lived with her uncle Jacob David, who became her legal guardian, and other cult members in Colorado until recently. While staying with him, she was not able to remember what happened that day. At one point, she stated to her uncle, quote, "I want to shove it all out. I want my family back," unquote.
Wow. See, even she said she couldn't remember, even after all that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I couldn't tell you which child I saw fall or which. I saw 3 bodies hit the ground. And I saw one flipping in the air, but I don't know if it's my memory. One of them I saw flip and then hit the ground. I couldn't tell you. I backed away down the street, because the building's long. And I was maybe halfway up the building when they fell, where they fell at. And I backed up. And it was just like I couldn't see what they're talking about when the mother was hanging on the railing, I guess, and she jumped. I didn't see her because I was literally right on the edge of the building. I couldn't see her. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know where these bodies were coming from my perspective. But people over here across the street and further down could.
And when that camera and that video panned down, somebody had gone up to that, so it showed the location where the bodies were
right
headed.
down where you saw that sidewalk. I was just to the right of that. I was walking from right to left coming up that street. So wherever they landed in that area, I was just to the right of that coming up the street. So, like I said, from my perspective, like I said, I was a young kid. It's like watching a horror movie for your first time in real life. How do you deal with that? You're like, this ain't real. No, and I couldn't believe that somebody would, throw someone off or jump off themselves or whatever. I didn't know at the time what was going on. All I saw was people hitting the ground, and that freaked me out because it wasn't. It was to watch a human body fall. They don't just fall and crumple. No, they fall and kind of bounce, and they might roll a little, or whatever. And then, as your brain kind of clears a little bit, you're like, "Whoa!" And you start putting, what is happening? You realize there's blood leaking out of these bodies on the ground. I think I saw the one kid, they mentioned one hit the gutter. I think I saw that one. That one went out toward the road more. That's probably the one I saw fall. One of the first couple of them I saw fall first. And they weren't very big. That's how I knew they weren't adults. They were children. They were smaller than me, So it had to be the younger children I saw fall first. And then I just backed up and I kind of stayed close to the building and just backed up. I didn't want to see it. And I stayed back and I watched it unfold as police showed up and ambulance and all that other stuff. I don't know how long I was there. I couldn't tell you. I know by the time I got on the bus, it was dark. So it was obviously in the evening. I walked back down to State Street, which is a block over. And I walked back over to State Street and got on a bus and headed for home. I was like, I didn't know where my friend went. And I was scared. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Is this the end of the world? I mean, I'm a little kid, my brain's playing games with me, So yeah, that whole event, I hear that. I'm hearing details for the first time. I didn't know why. I knew that it was some nut job that I didn't know if it was a man or a woman. Now I know it's a woman. It was the mom who did it. See, I didn't know. I thought it was the dad. I thought it was a dad threw his kids off. I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, why did I remember them hitting the ground? Because I saw it. And it's not that I tried to forget it. It's just my brain said, no, you get out of here. You're in the way. So push it to the back. And for years, I didn't even think about it.
For about 45 years.
Right. I just woke up and said, wow, wait a minute. I couldn't tell you what year it was. I knew I was young. I was in no more than junior high. And in fact, this is even before junior high. See, I couldn't tell you.
So Bert, your willingness to kind of go back through unfortunate memory lane has helped, again, put another nail in the coffin to the, that was horrible. But it's helped to,
that was harsh,
additionally put to rest the idea of false memories.
Yeah. But even the girl who was injured, she doesn't remember anything.
That's
now,
right.
If she, even if her injuries weren't so severe, she would remember, right? Well, she said she doesn't remember any of the jump.
Right.
Why? You see, that's her mind. Her mind's trying to protect her from those hurtful memories. It's the same thing. that's why I don't believe these people, the naysayers. I don't believe that, in fact, I've talked to you before in the past. Back in '08, I was in a bad car accident, head-on collision. I broke my neck, broke my sternum. All this stuff happened to me. For about 6-month time period, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, so on top of everything you went through, it was
on top of everything else. Yeah, and this is after I was out of the service. It was back in '08. It was a no-fault collision. The other lady hit me. She came across the line and smacked me. So all that, that's the thing is I don't remember. My daughter one time, she said, "Daddy, I wish you could be the guy you were before. You were fun." I don't remember that guy. I am not the same person today I was prior to '08. I don't remember that person. I've had to start over. And I do have memories, parts of the accident I remember clearly, vividly, leading up to the accident and the accident. I remember bit pieces after the accident, but it's fragmented. And then months after that, I don't remember anything. I don't know.
Bert, I should have mentioned, because now it's actually going to add additional credence. And unfortunately, we don't have too much time to go into it, but suffice it to say, some people could say, well, okay, combat, we can see how that,
the trauma of combat can be understood. Yeah.
But you were involved in, or you were subjected to, a head-on collision. How fast was she going? And you were at a stop, I believe.
No, I was traveling down a two-lane road, going toward an intersection, and the two cross streets were stop signs. There was a turn lane made out of the same lane. You know what I mean? It's just a 2-lane road. So there was a lady paused, waiting for me to go through so she could turn left. She'd be turning left. She was in a Grand Am. Behind her came a pickup truck, an F-250 or so, flying at over 100 miles an hour, and smacked her in the rear end. As I approached the intersection, before my nose of my car even entered the intersection, she got collided. All I saw was an explosion of pieces. I heard the bang and saw the explosion. I saw a blur of a car flying past me this way, and then a grill. I didn't have time to get my foot off the gas. I was doing 45 miles an hour in a 45 zone. It happened that fast. As my nose entered the intersection, I collided with her almost dead center of my lane, in the length of that intersection, in the middle of it. And all I remember is I hit hard, and I could hear crunching sound, and I kind of opened my eye, and I looked out the corner of my eye to my right, and I could see her truck button up against my car, pushing me to the back corner of the intersection. Now, if you picture an intersection, 2 corners up front, 2 corners in the back, I was going this way. I never made it through the intersection. She hit me, turned me around, and pushed me back to this back corner. Our 2 cars rested up against the corner of that intersection. That's a hard hit. Put it in perspective, I hit so hard that not only, of course, shoved my engine into my firewall of my car, I hit the steering wheel with my chest. I broke the steering column. When they came to pry me out of the car, I thought I was just pressed up against the steering wheel. No, I was sitting up on top of the steering wheel this way, even with the top of the dash. My head was pinned between the glass and the dashboard, and I had a seatbelt on. So not only did I stretch the seatbelt, which means it hurt my stomach, I had bruising across here. It racked me up in, and I didn't feel anything right after the accident. I felt numb, head to toe. Absolutely numb. And my military training kind of kicked in, and I go self-assess. No blood. Okay, good. I look down, I can see my hands. And I'm sitting on top of the steering wheel, literally this way, sitting on top of. The steering wheel went like that, and I'm sitting up on top of it. And I'm looking down at my toes, and it didn't calculate to me that I'm looking down at my toes instead of in a car looking out at your toes. You know what I mean? I'm literally above them, but it didn't calculate. So I thought, I'll just push myself back carefully away from the steering wheel, catch my breath. I wasn't breathing too good. I know it was a hard hit. I thought, take it easy. Don't move too much. And I could wiggle my toes. I could move my fingers. And I thought, okay, I don't feel any pain. Maybe I'm okay. I went to go to push off that steering wheel, though, and it was more of a push-up. And lightning shot through my body, and my arms started twitching, just jerking like this, down my both arms and down both legs. And it felt like lightning shots going down my neck. And I just kind of grabbed on the steering wheel going, and I'm trying to breathe because of the impact. Now everything's hitting me. And I just held on to the steering wheel, and I just said, oh, crap, I am hurt. And I'm hurt more than I thought. And I said, just don't move. So I just held onto the steering wheel. Somebody over here to my left on the passenger side somehow got the door open because it xylophoned the whole front of my car. Some guy said he was a medic, sheriff, somebody, and he says, "Are you okay?" And I go, "I can't breathe." And those are the only words I could get out. And he said, "Don't move." I said, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I couldn't see what was going on. Apparently they broke my seat back, got me out of the car. They said something about a half backboard to lay me down and slide me out. And I kept saying, no, don't move me. No, it hurts. Don't move me. They put me on some big collar, laid me back on the board, and I kind of passed out for a minute because of the pain. Next thing I know, I wake up, I see the top of an ambulance, the roof. Kind of passed out again. Woke up in the hospital. I could see the ceiling. I knew I was in. Now, okay, I'm in a hospital. I could remember the accident leading up to just before I got hit. I thought, and the first thought that was funny was when I first got hit and I'm sitting on top of that steering wheel before I felt the pain, I looked through the top of my eyes and I could see the hood, like a big crunch. And I looked at it and I thought, I just wrecked my wife's car. She's going to kill me. That was only came to my mind,
Yeah.
Well,
Bert,
and I was very calm about it. But that's what I'm saying.
Unbelievable.
But the thing is, I don't know why I've lost so much memory after I returned home from the hospital. I don't know what I did. And I have picture books that we went to Disneyland. Who forgets Disneyland, right? Apparently as a family, after I got my insurance money and all this, within that next year or two, somewhere in that time period, we went to Disneyland. I don't remember a thing about it. And I'm the one who took some of those pictures. What does that tell you? I've looked at them and before my kids, they said, "Dad, you were with the camera. You're the one taking the pictures." I'm like, I don't remember driving to Disneyland from Salt Lake down to California. I don't remember walking through Main Street Disneyland. I don't remember any of it at all. And I've tried to remember. I've got pictures of my kids with, their cute little tiaras and their cute little Mickey Mouse ear hat and all that garbage. And I'm just like, when did this happen? I told you, I'm not the same guy I was prior to. I've had to relearn and find out who I am again. I have forgotten. Even today, I struggle with days of the week, hours of the day, appointments. It goes on and on. So these people who try to say that there's traumatic memory loss is not a thing, excuse me, I'm sorry. I beg to differ. It is a real thing.
And you've experienced multiple types of, all in one person.
Sometimes.
You represent, right? Something from a traumatic.
I drew that lucky card. I'm sorry.
Right. So in one person, you can speak to a traumatic accident, a traumatic wartime situation, and then also an ongoing situations while in the military, and then also early memories that got shoved away for 45 years of witnessing something that an 11-year-old.
It's only been the last about 3 years that I've quit walking with a cane. After the accident, I was in an electronic wheelchair for the first year or two. I don't even know how long. I couldn't walk. But I told myself I'm not going to be an invalid in a wheelchair. So I went to therapy. I pushed myself and I got myself to where I could stand up. Then I caught my balance enough to where I could start learning to use a cane. I still wobble. There's days where I just have to kind of stop and sit down. I'm not sure on my foot. My back is shot. I got a 90-year-old man's back right now. My spine's gone. My hips, my knees, all of it. But somewhere, here's another twist to your whole theory. In my mind, I'm still young. In my mind somewhere in all of this, I feel like I'm that 21 or 22-year-old back in the days of the military. I'm very juvenile in my mind sometimes. I'm thinking, oh, that'd be good. Hey, let's go party with the boys. Well, those days are long gone. You know what I mean?
I think you're youthful in your mind, but yeah.
In my mind, I am.
Part of you. Mm-hmm.
But it's good for me, though, because it keeps me from, I don't believe in the pity pot. Woe is me. I don't stay on the pity pot. If something bad happens, I'm like, water under the bridge, move on. There's no need to sit there and cry about spilled milk kind of thing, whatever analogy you want to use. And I love my wife because we fit well together because she kind of does the same thing, but she struggles more than I do in that arena, I think. But, everybody in this life has trauma of some kind, whether it be extreme all the way down to, I didn't get my toy for Christmas. You know what I mean? And of all ages. And I think what it is you just have to decide where your place is, where you fit, what you handle. And this is why I believe in the Almighty. What he gives me, I thank him for it, and I move on, I learn from it, and I just keep going. And I hope that my fellow servicemen out there, who are my brothers and sisters, I hope that they get the help they need and that they understand they are not alone. You're never alone. Even if there's no person around you, you got the Almighty above you still. There's somebody upstairs. That's something to think about. And if you don't believe in that, well, then find something else that does work for you. I don't tell people how to live, but find something greater than yourself. Believe in it, trust it, follow, that will do good to you and to fellow mankind. Yeah. And
well, Bert, thank you.
So
we
I'm done
need
preaching
hours,
now.
Right? We literally need hours because there's so much compressed into your life's story. So, well, thank you for being willing to open up some difficult times, difficult chapters of your life to share and to give hope to people that if they have lost chunks of time, that depending upon what caused that, they at some point in time may recover those, may retrieve those.
Or just create new ones. That's what I find easier.
And moving forward,
so I've let the past go, and I'm like, hey, if I find something or I remember something, great. But you know what? I'm in the here and now. Yesterday is gone, can't be retrieved. Tomorrow's not promised. So I'm in the here and now. And I live every day like that now. I wake up in the morning, look at my wife, say, okay, what's on the agenda for today?
There you go.
What are we doing?
And that's the goal, to be able to be fully emotionally present in the moment. So, well, Bert, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for your service, even though you, those of you that served tend to have a different perspective that you just did, what you were called upon to do. But we thank you and those that have served, and hopefully, again, that somebody in a lawmaking position will feel compelled to do the right thing by those that were in Panama.
And there's been a lot of other places other than Panama.
Yes, there have. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then on behalf of those that felt like that if they have had memories surface, that they can't count on those because it was either in a dream or they believed the lie, really, that if something traumatic happened, then they would remember it. So I know you've given hope to those people that they can begin to investigate what has come up.
And if they, one last quick thought, I think if a person thinks it's just a dream, always remember a dream is, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, I'm not a therapist or anything, but a dream is nothing more than your memories being filed by your brain into some kind of coherent or incoherent place. And so if you're dreaming about an event that you're in it, there's something there that is somehow there's reality in there. Something really did happen at some point. It may not be the same way the dream shows it, but a vision is different. I mean, not a vision, a suppressed memory is different. You'll have the same exact suppressed memory. You'll be reliving it over and over. And it's like a movie. You can't pause. You can't fast forward. You can't skip it. You have to go through it. And it doesn't change because the movie's on film. You know what I mean? It just doesn't change. It's the same thing over and over. All the emotions there, everything. A dream, on the other hand, things can twist and change and morph, and unreal things happen. They don't make sense. And that's how I know if I'm having a dream or a memory. If I can control that in a sense, okay, let me put this in perspective. If I can control that in a sense that if I'm dreaming and I know something's out of place, then I can signify that as a dream. But if it's something I can't stop it, it's like it's almost like I'm paralyzed, forced to watch it and live it again. That's a memory. And believe me, I know the difference between a dream and a memory. When I go into a flashback mode, I'm aware of it, but I can't stop it. It has to play its course out to a certain point. And then I can regain control of my consciousness and wake up. And that's when I wake up almost screaming or sweating or whatever. And it scares me because there's times I've been awake and had that happen. If you're fully awake and you see the whole world change in front of your eyes and you're back in the past and you're stuck there, that's a scary thing. I've been there. You see things out of the corner of your eye, things in front of you that aren't what's really around you. It'll literally visually transform into where you were. Sights, sounds, smells, all of it. And people cannot relate unless they've experienced it. And I'm telling you, it's mostly hearing and smell will trigger it more than anything, in my opinion, from my perspective. Visually, those visions, I can watch a movie with shoot up, bang, bang, blood and all that. And that doesn't trigger me near as much as an actual real world backfire of a car, firework, the real world noise that's unexpectedly happened will trigger me faster. That's what I'm saying. But the memories of what I did, that this time period I'm missing, the part I'm missing, I almost don't want to know, because I know how bad the stuff I do remember is. And the guy I talked to at the VA that I mentioned to you before, he also said that he can't find part of his records. I can't find part of mine from that time period. That man told me that he thought I was insane. I don't know what he was referencing to. I don't know what I did. So leave that for what it is. He thought I was an absolute insane nut. And I don't remember it. And I told him, I said, I don't. So even in that state of mind where I was locked down and blocked out of consciousness, my body was moving. My brain was working to make me move and do and go. But I couldn't tell you. There's no memory. I couldn't tell you what I did. My mind wouldn't allow myself to remember it. Mm-hmm. And I could have done some horrific things, and I don't remember. And it scares me because I'm not in my core, my heart. I'm not that person. I don't want to hurt nobody. I didn't want to be there in the first place. But for my own sanity, maybe over time, it'll come out. And I'm trying to prepare myself that when it decides it's going to come out, then I have to go back to my belief in God, my faith, where I'm at now, and put it in perspective like I've done with the things I have remembered. So I'm just letting my mind decide when the time is right for it to release that information to me.
Bert, that's well put. And there are some people that when they were young, they were forced to participate in things. And, very similar, right? Challenges to work through issues of responsibility. Well, Bert, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness and your contribution to the subject of repressed memories.
All right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for all your time, your help.
Thanks for being a part of the program.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, John Euler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, to schedule a personal consultation with John, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with John, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.